Okay, welcome back to a very special edition of the Futurist New Deal podcast. And this is another in our series of cross-party debates. I am honored to be joined by Emmanuel Morel, former federal investigator for many, many years, and now running for U.S. Congress in the 20th District in Florida, and a very interesting race. A lot of important issues in that race. Welcome, Emmanuel. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It is truly a pleasure. I'm grateful that you've given me this opportunity to be interviewed.
Yes, as I mentioned in our pre-interview, I'm running for a campaign for president with the Transhumanist Party. However, an awful lot of the people in my network are Justice Democrats and reform-minded people. It's very much a part of my belief system. And so some of the other three debates that I've had were with libertarian candidates, and these were people that I differed with. I'm really interested in comparing our views on some of these issues because I think my listeners will be supporters of yours.
Well, thank you so much.
Excellent. We've talked a little bit about some of the lobbies in Florida and how that influences certain concerns around worker protections and other related concerns. You're also campaigning on a number of important subjects, including gun safety.
Correct.
Just about 2 weeks ago, a one-issue presidential candidate in the Democratic Party, Eric Swalwell, who was campaigning on assault weapons buyback. He left the race. What was your take on that? Why do you think this important issue has been set aside?
Well, I don't think the issue itself has been set aside. I just think we have reached a point in this country where many folks who talk about it don't really believe that it's going to happen. But I believe that it will happen. It must happen in order for us to survive as a nation. We can't have a place where anybody can buy assault weapons, as we just witnessed in California. The man, he bought it legally in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and he went crossover and killed those kids, those folks. Look, it is an idea whose time has come. We Americans must make a decision whether we want to destroy from within or from without. The banning of assault weapons must happen. And we must get those weapons back. We can't allow these things to be in our communities. Look, former Justice, and he's now deceased, Scalia, said that those weapons do not belong in our cities, in our communities. They are weapons of war. So any official who does not take action against those weapons, blood is in their hands because they do not belong in our cities.
And when this decision to allow assault weapons, this is not something that goes back to time immemorial. These weapons of mass destructions on our street. It started to happen in the 1990s when Scalia was still and he was responding to that. And Justice Scalia was an arch conservative on social issues. But even he recognized that this is a public health concern of the highest order. And I thank you for recognizing that. I read an article just a few weeks ago. It said that 1 million people are going to be affected by gun violence, directly or indirectly, in just in a short time. And this is not a problem that other developed countries have, and it's due to very short-sighted policy making, in my view.
Well, it is all about the mighty dollar. It's all about money. The NRA and those corporations that manufacture them, they are publicly traded companies. They made a lot of money, especially during the Obama administration. The stocks of those companies, the share prices went way up because they kept saying that Obama was going to come for their guns, which was not true, and they made a lot of money, and they continue to terrorize our communities. But the bottom line is this: any county, any city, any state can take action. If they want to take action, they can ban those weapons. There is nothing that precludes any of them from taking action to banning those weapons.
Yes, yes, and it's something that we just have to have the political will. And like you said, a lot of people maybe have feelings that we should have gun safety laws to a greater degree in the U.S. Even just to the point of going back to what we had in the 1990s would be a good step. But they fear that nothing will happen. There's a conditioned sense of defeatism, and it's something that we have to push through. We have to be protesting these things and making a stand and voting for people like yourself who are willing to take the side of public health and the public interest. The Futurist New Deal has a number of points in it, but one thing that I didn't discuss in the Futurist New Deal writings or materials that I've been sharing is something that's very close to my heart that you've been supporting is college, college tuition and debt forgiveness from this terrible system that creates a huge amount of debt for people just trying to join the workforce and do right by their families. Tell us a little bit about your college tuition platform.
Well, what I'm looking for is what every developed nation has: college-free tuition. Tuition should not be a burden when you go to college. Right now, we have kids coming out of school, they owe an arm and a leg, literally, because first of all, they want to get the education, but if they don't get the loans, they won't get the education that they need. And then when they graduate, they don't make enough money to make the payments. So these kids, just imagine what we've done to our kids. This is called, I would not call it slavery, I call it indentured servants. They start way behind the starting line. Way behind the starting line is where they are. So it is hard for them to catch up. It is so hard for them to catch up. And unless their parents have money, they cannot pay those loans. They just can't. So that's why I support forgiveness of student loans, whether it's private or public, because they are held back. And if we would do that, we would free those folks to invest in the economy. It would truly stimulate the economy, in addition to lifting them to freeing them from bondage.
Yeah, and it's not just an unhappy coincidence that we have these things. Yesterday in our pre-interview, we talked about how Social Security Social Security benefits were taxed to pay for tax cuts for billionaires in the 1980s. This is an intentional step towards this kind of system of indentured servitude, as in the way that you described it, having people have onerous debts that prevent them from starting businesses or pursuing the work that they want to be doing, because it's not just something that happened by accident. It's a set of corporatist policies meant to keep people from having any real mobility at all, except for those privileged few who you mentioned who are come from more independently wealthy families.
Yes.
And it's not a feature of the rest of the developed world. It's a feature of U.S. dysfunction, and people need to recognize that. Oh, sorry, please continue.
No, this is what hurts me most, is to see how many poor people or middle-class people who believe this is normal.
Mm.
We have come to accept this as normal.
Mm.
I'm telling you, this slide down began on January 20th, 1981, when Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president. Ever since then, we have been going down. The poor have gotten poorer, the rich have gotten richer. This started January 20th, 1981. When I graduated from college, I owed about $2,500 in student loans. Okay, and this was nothing. But now, kids are coming out owing 60, owing 100,000. There is no way. There's just no way, and they don't make enough money to make the payments. Make the payments. Those are things I want the American people to do. This is not normal. The rest of the world does not deal with it. I have a friend in Copenhagen who said to me, she doesn't understand why Americans put up with this.
Yes. No, if a fraction of these policies were implemented in France, people who would be in the streets by the hundreds of thousands.
Oh yeah.
People have a sense in which these corporatist this corporatist policy making is somehow an act of God. It's somehow a part of it's funny. I was interviewing a guy and we were talking about China, and he was criticizing state-run capitalism in China. And there's a lot to criticize there. But state-run capitalism in China tries to build infrastructure to the extent we do have something akin to state-run capitalism in the U.S. and it's purely kleptocracy, or it's very much in the realm of kleptocracy.
Correct.
And people need to be protesting this at every step, and I think including these in their discussions of what they're planning to do in terms of other protests and other actions. There's a lot of ways to approach this. I wanted to talk more about wage theft and your investigations of this and your impressions of this. Particular to your state, or more policy or general policies.
Let me give you a perfect example. After Hurricane Andrew in 1992, I investigated Halliburton. They owed the employees $12 million in overtime that they did not pay. I computed wages going back 2 years that Halliburton failed to pay those employees. Now, guess what? Halliburton, the attorney for Halliburton called me from Washington and told me that he could make the files disappear or he could make me disappear. Exactly.
That's a horror.
Yes.
This is an institution that exists solely to triple bill the government and pay big golden parachutes to their shareholders, and they have no money to pay personnel. The idea of paying people, that's absurd. The idea of building the government, that's okay.
and let me tell you, I was so scared. At the time I was 32 years old. I had two little kids,
my God.
And when I got that threat, I walked into my district director to tell him about it. I thought he was going to jump up and down Okay, we're going to go after them. He just smiled at me under his glasses. And 3 days later, a phone call came from Washington, D.C. to send the files to the national office, and the files have disappeared.
Jeez.
Yeah, welcome to America.
Yeah, yeah. And that's in 1992 when some of these corporatist policies were just gaining a head of steam.
Correct. Correct.
It's when ALEC was, nobody knew what ALEC was. They were doing only a little bit of work. There was no Citizens United. This was kind of when the Koch network was just insinuating its way into the Democratic Party and the two-party system. But already you have these Pentagon private corporations associated with the Pentagon having so much power that they can just act with impunity and threaten people's lives over something like this.
Yes, I mean, if people only knew what goes on, but sadly, no, people don't want to take to the streets anymore. I don't know if people are just too tired. They just don't want to. They just don't want to deal with it. But everybody now has 2 or 3 jobs, just trying to make payments, just trying to keep a roof over their heads. But what I'm saying, what people like me and like you are saying, it doesn't have to be this way. It does not have to be this way. This is a rich nation, but unfortunately, the system is now set up to benefit the 1% and nobody else. We're becoming just like Somalia, just like Haiti. We're becoming, I mean, those are places where they literally have true capitalism. In America, we don't have true capitalism. We have capitalism for the poor, socialism for the rich. That's what we have in America. Because when the markets crash, they lose money, we bail them out. But there is nobody to bail us out. Nobody to bail the poor guys out.
And that's reflected in almost every policy initiative undertaken by this cabinet and this president. Anti-worker measures of many kinds, and all manner of payouts and easy relationships with very large corporations. There's no concern for smaller organizations at all. It's all about these lobbies and these this sustaining this oligarchic system.
Sir. And you know what? America is ripe for a revolution. America is ripe for a revolution. In any other place, people would rise up. People would rise up. Nobody would deal with this. The idea that when the market crashed, the banks got bailed out, the automakers got bailed out, but the people who suffer got nothing. They got nothing. And nobody said a damn thing about that. Nobody. And nobody went to jail.
And even the quantitative easing measures that were done basically to maintain housing, the price of homes at which were already artificial high at that same artificially high level. So guys like Dick Cheney wouldn't lose any value in their many multi-million-dollar homes. But the result is then you're taking a lot of money, a lot of value out of the economy. You're not helping all the people who are actually struggling, and you're maintaining housing costs at an artificially high level, despite the fact that you have artificially low wages as well. Again, just a system of indentured servitude, a system of callous disregard for the people. And you know, when we talk about this kind of thing, you know, if there is a government and this government does not do its job in making people's lives better, it only does it does this in a very limited way. We're right to call for all kinds of systematic changes. You know, in the Futurist New Deal, I've been talking to a few people. Some of them, I'm getting some pushback on things about incentivizing full votership,
Right.
about changing voting systems. You know, part of the Futurist New Deal is a I-voting, a system which is fully implemented in Estonia. They have blockchain voting there. And, you know, someone like Mitch McConnell, when talking about voter suppression generally, or problems of this kind generally, says, well, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? There's no problem from the point of view of Republicans that only 25% of people ever vote, because that allows them to micromanage the system on the behalf of, at the behest of lobbyists.
Yep. Yeah, they look, the bottom line is this. There is a group of folks in this country who does not want people to vote. We know that. They don't want them to vote. In Florida, we, the citizens of Florida, passed Amendment 4, which would restore the rights of folks who have been to prisons. Now, guess what? The Governor DeSantis and his gang of thieves, they've decided to put a poll tax. They put it's a poll tax. So now they're telling those folks they have to pay back whatever they owed to the system. It's a poll tax. The whole system, the whole thing stinks on ice. It really stinks on ice. This cannot continue and must not continue.
I'm still here, sir.
Okay.
It's not supposed to do that. It went to it. I apologize. Yes, it's a big mess, and you know, people. I don't want to cast aspersion on any place, or particularly your lovely state, which has many things to recommend it. But there are sometimes outside watchdog agencies that are looking at places like Texas or Florida and looking at specifically voter suppression and related concerns, and they're saying, you kind of don't have a functioning democracy here anymore. You should really be a little more focused on trying to fix that. But the two-party system and the rank and file Democrats, I should point out, people different from yourself, and the two-party system generally, and Republicans are really the worst offenders by far when it comes to voter suppression.
Right.
They are the ones. They are the ones who are implementing and promoting these kind of systems that are subverting democracy across the boards, and they campaign on this.
And I hate to say it, I know the Republicans are the ones who, I mean, they are the ones who really don't want people to vote. But frankly, if the shoe were in the other foot, I think Democrats would do the same thing, because I really believe the rich, regardless of political parties, do not want poor people to get ahead.
No,
this is what
people like
this
Nancy
is where
Pelosi.
we are.
Yeah. Now, people like Nancy Pelosi, they sometimes pay lip service to some of these things, but it's pretty clear that she would rather lose elections than make any real reforms, substantive reforms, because the two-party system that they have, if the Republicans start to lose traction, if the Republicans are actually prosecuted for crimes, or some of these systems of voter suppression are removed where you actually have representative governance, then they have to start listening to constituent concerns. They have to start listening to people like you, and they would rather lose elections than risk their donors turning on them.
They make it so hard for people like me to challenge the incumbents, where you have to come up with almost $11,000 to file just to get on the ballot. Just to get on the ballot, it's almost 11 grand. And they make it so hard to challenge the incumbents. So you really come to understand why these people like it the way it is. Because they want to control. They want to control. They don't want $15 minimum wage. They don't want Medicare for all. They don't want forgiveness of student loans. They want to keep people poor so they cannot control their lives. As long as you're poor, remember this, there's a lot of money being made off of poor people.
Yes.
There's a lot of money to be made off of poor people.
When Senator Sanders in 2016 introduced part of his platform for reforming payday lending,
exactly.
and not only regulating that, but offering other channels of that are not usury for people. And then these related lobbies and these organizations dumped a ton of money into the Republican coffers to prevent that from happening. Same thing with prison reform. There's the United States in 2015 was at a point where even very socially conservative people were interested in prison reform. But somehow they got duped by very slick con men. We know their names. And I want to say something. We were talking about your process of campaigning. There's a Netflix film that a lot of my viewers have enjoyed called "Knock Down the House," about Ocasio-Cortez and other Justice Democrats running. Very touching film. I cried at the end of this.
Yeah, I have seen it.
Yes, and I think it's worth pointing out. This is not a plug for Netflix. This is a plug for Emmanuel Morel. This is a man who's fighting that same fight and doing those same kinds of things. And I hope that my viewers will support your campaign in any and every way that they are able, because like we were saying, there's a lot of problems in particular southern states, but across the U.S. With voter suppression and with the subversion of democracy more generally through gerrymandering and all of this dark money that and rather than just feeling defeatist about this, we need to be like yourself, sir, and take a stand and be pushing these issues into the light.
Yeah, what I'm asking people to do, please, is to go to our website, www.morel2020, morel2020.com, and donate, even if it's $5, whatever you can donate, because that's what we need. We need grassroots. We're not taking corporate money. I have been approached by people who said that I must go to the corporations. No, I don't want to. I don't want to win an election owing corporations. I don't want to do that. That's why we are in the mess we're in. But if everybody, every concerned citizen would donate at least $5, you and I would have enough money to run campaigns that we can win. We would have enough. We would have enough.
And this is money well spent. This is a candidate who's supporting a $15 minimum wage at the national and state level. And this is a candidate who's supporting other humane economic policies, other stimulus initiatives. People talk about the individuals donating $5, $27. They see rewards from that in better policies, and it's a worthwhile thing to be doing. And we'll link to morel2020.com on this page as well as this goes up. Tell us a little bit about your initiative for subsidizing housing costs. It seems every day the HUD is trying to undermine poor people's economic security in various ways. Other kinds of initiatives like this. You're going to stop that, and you're going to move us in a better direction so that people can.
Well, this administration, when after it's all said and done, not only must they must not simply be out. Many of them should be jailed, should be tried and jailed, because this is a criminal operation from top to bottom. Every single one of them, from Donald Trump, who's a rapist, a child molester, and I have proof for all of them. Let me tell you, Donald Trump follows me on Twitter. The reason he does that is because I call him out every day. Donald Trump is a rapist, a child molester. I was going after him before I left the government. The man is no good. I told everybody that in 2016. I said, you would be surprised. This man runs a criminal operation. That's what he runs.
Yes.
And this is what's leading us right now. A criminal operation.
And there's been a number of publications that have published things, that said, he was denied the right, he was denied the ability to build a casino because basically they said this is a mafia guy.
Yes,
we can't have an organized criminal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is somebody who some 25% of the people in this country still regard this person as a reformer. He's cutting their Medicare. But they still regard him as their champion somehow. It's incredible. It's an incredible confidence trick.
My mother used to say, she passed away 4 years ago. She used to say to me all the time, Emmanuel, let me tell you, stupidity, and I'm quoting her, stupidity may not kill you, but it will make you sweat.
Oh yeah.
But let me tell you, stupidity is making us sweat. People who live in people who, in Appalachia, people who are so poor they cannot rub 2 pennies together voting for Donald Trump. What gives? What gives? How does that happen?
Yeah, and it doesn't just reflect an inconvenience. Noam Chomsky said in the wake of the 2016 election of Hillary Clinton, there's many of things to be criticizing these blue dog Democrats. But Noam Chomsky said, all of these people who chose Donald Trump as this sham economic populist over someone like Clinton, they made a terrible mistake. And this is someone who's consistently supported left-wing candidates and initiatives.
Right.
And that mistake translates. It's not just an inconvenience; it translates into a loss of life. By not having those Medicare expansions in states, by not having those public options in states, that's thousands of people who have died in the U.S. who would otherwise still be playing with their grandkids, and doing wonderful things. And they're not with us now because of these oligarchic and sham populist ideas, and people not having the political will to resist it.
Yep. No, the district that I seek to represent right now,
District 20 in Florida.
Yeah, District 20. The west side of District 20, which includes Belle Glade, Pahokee, South Bay. Let me tell you, you should see when you go there. It's only 35 minutes west of me. It's like you've arrived back in time into the 18th century. Poverty is rampant, 40% poverty rate. The Green New Deal would mean having the Green New Deal enacted would make a lot of sense for that area. A lot of sense. Because so many people in that area have asthma. It's all environmental. They're being poisoned to death by the sugar people. The sugar industry controls that area. And people don't fight for them to bring an end to this poverty. That's what bothers me.
No, it's a travesty, and we want to be respectful of these people's values and of the privation that many of them are experiencing. But at the same time, it's hard to see these people who are cutting off their nose to spite their face in policy terms. And it's hard to know how to react to that kind of thing. But they've fallen prey. Judge Andrew Napolitano, the Fox News legal correspondent, who's been with that organization for a long time, he commented recently that to the effect that Donald Trump was really doing some saying some racist things that were unacceptable. But the simple fact is, guys like Andrew Napolitano, Napolitano, and Fox News have been poisoning these people's minds for 20 years, convincing them that they're not worthy of the basic protections that would allow them to be living a better life. And so it's so hypocritical for them to then be turning to one particular outlandish point that the president has made, when they are all of these things are the result of their brainwashing over many years.
This again, it started on January 20th, 1981. What you see in Baltimore, what you see in Philadelphia, in major American cities, it's a result of Ronald Reagan, of his policies. They have destroyed the cities. They have literally destroyed the cities. And now Donald Trump's son-in-law owns a lot of those buildings that he's talking about in Baltimore and many other places. The rich folks own those buildings that poor people live in. But unfortunately, and I hope this will change, the counties, the cities will take major action to fix this mess. To fix this mess and stick it to Donald Trump and his son-in-law, because they are the ones who are responsible as slum landlords.
Yes, and people think that it's going to be incredibly difficult to reform these things. It's not incredibly difficult to reform these systems. There's a lot of ways in which people. I think people in our community, they sometimes talk about the concept of a maximum wage or something like this. Jeff Bezos would still be doing all of his fine work or all of building out his automated operation in the way that he does if he was earning. If he had a value of $50 million instead of $100 billion. Elon Musk would still have plenty of profit motivation to do this sort of thing. And it would not require some incredible moving of the heavens and earth to change these systems. It just requires people and politicians like yourself who are able to say no thank you to that dark money, who are able to say these lobbies are not, that's not the job. The job is to represent constituents and advance human development and quality of life.
Here is something that I wish to tell folks.
Yes.
The reason that America landed on the moon 50 years ago this month is because we had a marginal tax rate of 90%. America was the envy of the world. Our economy was moving very well, but the marginal tax rate for multimillionaires was 90%.
Yeah,
and everyone was benefiting. The coffers of the Treasury was fine. We didn't have any debt. We were doing just fine.
Yeah, and you have people who were making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. They're deeply offended by this idea that an incredibly wealthy person should have to live on $2 million a year. I don't understand it at all.
You can't. You cannot explain it. You sit there, you baffled, because seriously, I find poor people saying that they don't think it's fair. I don't get it.
Yes, they're not thinking in terms of systems theory and in terms of policy. They're thinking of everything as some kind of a fairy story. Here's the hero, and they're doing such a great work. That's not reality, and that doesn't inform public policy decisions.
No, they have been convinced that they are going to be that rich themselves. They believe that they're gonna be rich. They're gonna hit the lotto. They're gonna hit the Powerball. they're gonna be that rich. They really believe this stuff.
Yeah. No, John Steinbeck said that. John Steinbeck said that in 1949, and I might be paraphrasing here, but he effectively said, every American kind of just poor schmuck thinks that they're a millionaire who suffered a temporary reversal of fortune, and that's a nice kind of inspirational sentiment, but it shouldn't be influencing public policy to the extent that it does.
Yeah,
we've had this slide throughout the 1980s, 90s, 2000s. Where we kind of just have a pretty decrepit middle class, because of the reversing these kinds of protections, and because of people just not having enough of a concern with fixing these things.
Every time that you hear these politicians talk about tax cuts, that means the poor are about to get shafted. That's all it means. That's all it means. Every time they talk about tax cuts, the rich are about to get more from us than they've got, and the poor are about to get far less. In the meantime, the middle class carries the poor and the very rich. So that's why the middle class is going away.
Yes,
That's
and it's
why
something.
it's going away.
It's something I tried to impress upon some of these libertarian guys that I've spoken to. I interviewed a few libertarian candidates and a lot of different people. They're upset that the desperately poor are having to be funded by working people and the middle class. But the middle class is also funding the obscenely wealthy, who used to shoulder their fair share of that tax burden, as you said, in that earlier time when we had 70, 80, 90%. And those people didn't suffer for it.
Not at all.
There's almost no diminishing rate of returns in quality of life for someone earning $300,000 versus someone earning $3 million plus a year. It's the same quality of life that they're experiencing. The way that this money is being used, it's power politics. It's got nothing to do with those people living better lives.
No. They all they do, they stash it away, and the interest is taxed at 15%, and they live well. But in the meantime, you have people in my district who just can't afford to make ends meet. I mean, there are people in my district who are living in substandard housing where their kids have roaches going into their ears. Yes, this is Palm Beach County, one of the richest counties in the nation. This is what's happening here in Palm Beach County, and I'm sorry to say, people have given up. Our politicians have not tried to help poor people anymore. Democrats don't talk about it anymore.
And in the same vein, in the last 10 years or so, you don't hear most Republicans and conservatives talking about American exceptionalism because the hollowing out of the middle class. There's no case to be made for American exceptionalism anymore. And this is still by far the wealthiest country in the world, but we don't have human development, and we don't have a middle class quality of life that's commensurate with that $14 trillion GDP. It's absurd, and it's absurd that people are so brainwashed that they can't even take the smallest of steps, like supporting a candidate, a Justice Democratic candidate, in protecting their own interests.
Again, I'm not asking you to max out at $2,700. I'm asking you, if each individual would give $5, $10, whatever you can afford,
Yes, please.
Whatever, even if it's $1, if 200,000 people give me $1, I'd have enough money.
Mm.
That's
Excellent.
all. That's all we have to do.
Mm.
We cannot give up. When I started to support Bernie Sanders,
Mm.
I understood the concept. Listen, if everybody would donate $27, that was from 2016. Hey, he could make it. But again, I've been a Bernie Sanders disciple since October 1981.
Very nice.
Since October 1981, I have followed Bernie Sanders. I've always loved his ideas. And now I said to people, okay, here I am. Send me. I want to be part of the squad.
Very nice.
I want to be part of the squad. But I guarantee you, Donald Trump would not take shots at me because he knows that I know where the bones are buried. And I try to tell my people, the Democrats, that this is where you go to get Donald Trump. I know where to go to get Donald Trump. Oh yes, sir. Oh yes, sir. I sure do.
And thank you for having that foresight to support this candidate, and not just the candidate. It's not only about a person. It's about the policies and about advancing all of our goals together. You know, it's just campaign slogan. You know, us, not me, kind of notion. So thank you for having the foresight to have been doing that. You know, when a lot of people hadn't heard of Bernie Sanders, that's an incredible thing. You know, speaking of the Trump administration, I wanted to ask you about something that's not so directly related to the policy platform, just because I wanted to get some impressions from people, specifically in Florida, about this. About 5 days ago, the U.S. placed restrictions on visas for basically Doctors Without Borders people from Cuba, saying that these public health outreach that they're doing to other countries, not even in the U.S., to other countries, Doctors Without Borders from Cuba, that's too political for the Trump administration it's too political to be trying to help sick people. How are people reacting to that, this kind of thing in Florida?
Well, actually, in Florida, especially South Florida, most people have tuned out. People have pretty much tuned out, and especially when it comes to Cuba, people have really tuned out. But I can tell you, I can vouch for what the Cuban doctors have done in the Caribbean and in Africa. They are doing great work. In Haiti, the Cuban doctors are in every corner. The countryside, they are helping people. And I mean, that's what it's supposed to be about. Cuba produces doctors and engineers, but in America, to become a doctor, to become an engineer, you owe an arm and a leg. Yes. And then we badmouth Cuba when they are taking care of their own people. Yes, they don't have much. But if you're being true to yourself, you will say that the reason they don't is because of this embargo that we put way back in the 60s that Obama lifted, and then this fool has now reinstated.
Yes. It's preposterous to do something like that. And you know, even despite U.S. embargo, Cuba has not quite the same, but life expectancy outcomes on par with the United States, and that's because they have a public health service. They care about the people. They're not trying to have this various race to the bottom kind of approaches to quality of life. And there's a lot of countries, relatively poor countries, not so controversial as Cuba, that have had similar outcomes. Sri Lanka, a country of some millions of people, a poor country, but men are living almost as long as men in the United States because the people in that country had the political will to create a public health service to create effectively a Medicare for all program, and as a result, that country is moving in the right direction. The United States moving in the wrong direction.
Totally. You realize we have not done, as a nation, we have not done anything big. The last big thing we did was putting a man on the moon in 1969. We have not done anything big, or you could say infrastructure-wise was the interstate highway under Eisenhower. But this nation has not come to the realization that we need to do big things. We need to have infrastructure. When you travel when you go to Europe, you look at the trains, you say, how come we don't have that? How come we don't have this in America? Because nobody wants to do big things.
Yes, and spending money on infrastructure, spending money on programs that allow people to live better and not be indentured servants first and foremost is it's what every other developed country does, just as an ordinary matter of course. Just because actually people actually care about themselves, and they care about each other enough to be willing to do that. And there's almost a sense in which people like Trump, the Trump administration, people like Steve Bannon, they all have a sense of an end of history. The idea that they don't care about what happens really. Restoring the United States middle class, it's like a fire sale. They're just, this border wall discussion wasn't even happening in 2014. No Republican cared about a border wall. Now there's $2.5 billion more going to this border wall, and that's just basically Trump taking that money to his mafia friends. More fire sale, taking money out of the system that as much as possible. And not being even willing to spend a few $100,000 in your state on Meals on Wheels things like this. It's sheer madness. The front runner in my upcoming primary. Her name is Rachel Haywire, and she's ostensibly running on a reform ticket also, but she's friends with Steve Bannon. She's friends with these far-right guys. She's just telling people what they want to hear. And then after the primary, she's going to go back to just talking about silly art projects and things, and not talking about public policy at all. It's sometimes, third-party politics can be a mess in that way.
Yes, I agree. But what we have to keep doing, and this is what I've been doing for years now, is tell people, you need to think. We need to start thinking. We don't think anymore. We don't rationalize things. We don't sit down to understand why certain things are done anymore. That's what troubles me. I remember when Ronald Reagan started this campaign about, he said he's going to balance the budget by increasing defense spending and cutting revenues, cutting taxes. I'm like, okay, in what world is this possible? How do you cut revenue, increase spending, and have a balanced budget? In what world? And the Republicans have been doing this since Ronald Reagan. And it has always ended up bad. Always.
Yeah.
It never ends well.
And Republican strategists have been pretty open about this to Santa Claus strategy. Basically after the fall of the Nixon administration, Republican strategists said, well, now we have very little public confidence in our party at that particular moment, and should have been continuing. And the Democrats are the party that are associated with this sort of Santa Claus, the social programs that people rely on to advance their own lives. And so the Republican strategists said we kind of have to be the bad Santa who's cautioning for fiscal conservatism, but at the same time undermining that system in order to sustain that kind of false narrative.
Right.
And that's exactly what you've just described. That's what they've been doing. And somehow, 40 years later, people are still falling for this con.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Again, they want, I have put it bluntly, that stupidity has ruled. Stupidity rules because people don't want to think for themselves. They want to follow the crowd. Nobody wants to stop and think, what is this thing that so-and-so is proposing? Does it work? Does it favor me? You people don't vote for their own interest. I don't get it.
And I think it's not an insurmountable problem. It's a relatively short trajectory to get people to this level of political literacy. But there's really other impediments. We need to be working towards full votership. We need to be removing dark money, making this illegal, overturning Citizens United, which the Democrats have had initiatives to do this in recent months. And we hope that people will be talking about that as much as they can and advancing that as much as they can. But if we can fix these things with around voter suppression and around low voter turnout in general, and fix these things with dark money, these are not insurmountable problems. I do believe that this problem of political illiteracy and political lassitude, not being engaged, those things will start to turn around. People have a learned helplessness in this regard, and we need to try and create conditions where that's not the case.
Yes, yes, I totally agree with you. But again, please help my campaign. Again, let me explain something to folks. At the end of the day, I have a good life. I am one of the most blessed human beings on the planet, not because I have a lot, but because I have enough. I have enough. I don't have fancy cars. I don't have this, but I have a roof over my head. But there are millions of people who don't have roofs over their heads in America. In America. When you drive around here to any bank parking lot or the post office parking lot at night, you see homeless folks in America. This is what we're dealing with here in America. So my point is this: if you want things to change, you must be engaged. You must be engaged.
And someone like ALCEE Hastings, he's not doing enough. He's not doing enough on behalf of those people. He's doing a lot on behalf of the sugar lobby, like you mentioned.
That's all. That's all.
And this is a guy. He's had his time. I understand he's a little under the weather as well.
Right.
So maybe this is a time for someone like yourself who has a more clear vision to step in and take the reins. And I hope our viewers will support. Go to Morel 2020 and support this campaign by talking about it, by making a donation, by helping Florida to not be a place that outside watchdog agencies look at and say it's not a functioning democracy. Let's move the needle back in the other direction and see these problems being fixed. And also take a moment and sign up for the Transhumanist Party. You don't have to change your political affiliation, to my viewers. It's just a moment to sign up and vote for me in our primary is this August. It starts on the August 11th, And so we have about 10 more days for me to be registering people in this registration drive. Your primary is next August, but you're gaining ahead of steam. You're getting these justice and reform-minded people engaged in this, and we're going to get there. And thank you, sir, for the work that you do.
I thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. I am truly, truly grateful that you have given me this opportunity when you did not have to.
No, thank you, sir.
I'm very thankful. Thank you.
Yes, and it's the very least that me and people in this reform-minded community can do to support a fellow Justice Democrat. So thank you, sir.